What is going down, YouTube? Danny G TV here in the house. Now, I have 3 topics to get into, and instead of making separate videos about all of them, which I initially planned on doing, I just thought, why not fit it all into one big chunky video? So the first topic I'm going to get into is Major League Baseball coming to an agreement. The lockout finally ending last week. Of course, since December 2nd, the MLB owners and the players have been in a lockout because the previous collective bargaining agreement expired, and they met every day, but they just could not come up with a new agreement until last week, on Thursday, I believe. And with the new collective bargaining agreement, there's going to be some changes that are going to go into effect for this season, the 2022 season, and some that'll go into effect for the 2023 season. The first one, the major one being the universal DH, which of course that means that instead of in the National League having the pitchers hit and the American League having a DH, a designated hitter, both leagues will now have a designated hitter, which will improve the game, I think. Growing up a Giants fan, and also, living in Arizona since I was 7, since I've been old enough to remember going to baseball games. That's a National League city, of course, Phoenix. So I'm used to the pitchers hitting. That's what I'm used to. But let's face it, most pitchers just are not good hitters. Now, there's some exceptions. Don't get me wrong. There are. The first one I remember being in 2007, even though I was a Giants fan, I went to a lot of Diamondbacks games that year just because I was getting into sports kind of for the first time around that time, a few months earlier. Late 2006, early 2007 was when I first started getting into sports. So I went to some Diamondback games, even though I was a Bay Area sports fan, Giants fan, Niner fan, Warriors fan, all that. I went to some D-backs games in 2007, and I just remember Micah Owens was one of their pitchers, of course, and he was a damn good hitter. Such a good hitter that he even pinched hit in the 2007 playoff game against the Rockies, I remember. And, of course, Madison Bumgarner being my favorite one of all time, because Madison Bumgarner has had a lot of memorable moments behind the bat as a Giant. He's had a lot of home runs, and he's been a good hitter. And, of course, Mad Bum playing for the Diamondbacks now, I would hope that he gets some chances to pinch hit every now and then, and he still gets to see his bat. Because, yes, there are pitchers that are good hitters, and hopefully we see the pitchers that can hit and are good at it have some role behind the bat, whether it's pinch hitting, playing in a game that they're not starting or something. Hopefully, they play some role. But so that's the number one change, of course, is that now both leagues will have the universal DH. Now, there's also going to be expanded playoffs. Now 12 teams will make the playoffs, and what's interesting is the team with the best record in the National League and the team with the best record in the American League will each have a first-round bye. So it's kind of going to be like NFL playoff vibes in the MLB playoffs, which is interesting. But there's some changes that are with the new CBA that are going to go into effect in the 2023 season, but will not be in effect this season. The first being the 14-second pitch clock, which when I first heard of that, I was like, what? But thinking about it logically, let's face it, like, the younger generation, and that includes me, people my age, and people 10 years younger, people 15 years younger, whatever, like, they might not be baseball might not be that attractive to them because the way that the generation is now addicted to social media doesn't have, like, that big of an attention span. That includes me, I struggle with that as well. A lot of them find the game boring. Now, a 14-second pitch clock will definitely improve that. Now, they're gonna have to test it out, of course. I don't know how it's gonna work. It might, and I can see why a lot of the old timers don't like it because that's not the game they grew up with, and I respect that, and I understand that. But it's definitely worth something to try out. We're gonna have larger bases, which I've listened to MLB experts like Eric Burns saying that they agree with that. They think it'll make the game safer. Pretty much makes me think that that's the right move to do. And they're going to have an increase in the minimum salary as well. So that'll be good. But those changes will go into effect in the 2023 season. This lockout lasted a long time. It postponed spring training. It canceled some games that are not going to be made up. A lot of people thought there weren't going to be a full 162 game season, but there will be now. The Giants are going to play their first spring training game on March 18th, and the Giants will play their first regular season game on April 8th. Opening day for the whole Major League Baseball will be on April 7th. So looking forward to the Giants season this year. We won 107 games last year, so I'm really looking forward to what we can do this year. But let's switch gears. Let's move on to the NFL. Now, Tom Brady, back on January 29th, I flew from Phoenix to LA. I'm in the rental car place, renting my car to pick up my friend who flew into flew into Santa Ana Airport. I'm at the LAX rental car facility, and then I waiting for my rental car, and all of a sudden I see that Tom Brady retired, and I'm like, wow, I just was not expecting that. But of course, everybody did not expect that it was going to be officially done until he posted something himself. And by the way, the reason why I brought up being in LA for a lot is because I was in LA for the Niners-Rams NFC Championship game. Now, the Niners almost would have played Tom Brady in the NFC Championship game because the Rams almost blew a 27-3 lead. Sound familiar, Falcons fans? And that would have been epic to see Brady versus Jimmy Garoppolo NFC Championship game, a Brady versus the 49ers NFC Championship game, which we could likely see a Brady versus the 49ers NFC Championship game this season. But the rumors since like about a week after his supposed first retirement announcement was, but when he announced it, basically said it wasn't official, and it was like TB12 Sports that I guess it announced it. Like Brady himself never officially said he was done. He said that he was going to take some time off and see how he felt in like 6 months, and of course, it ended up being less than 2 months where he decided to just come back. And Brady, he's going to be 45 this year, so props to him. He is the GOAT. Like, he definitely is the GOAT. Love Joe Montana, of course, but Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. I will admit that. But, of course, all the talk was, are the Niners going to trade for him? Now, I'm going to be real. 2 years ago, it was announced that Tom Brady, of course, was a free agent and that he wanted to play for the Niners because he grew up a Niner fan. He grew up in the Bay Area. He was at the Dwight Clark catch game against the Cowboys when he was only about 4 years old. He grew up a Niner fan, and of course it would be a dream come true for him to play for the Niners. And of course, the Niners having the history that they've had of course they've had the second greatest quarterback of all time was their star quarterback. Steve Young, also Hall of Famer Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott, all that, Roger Craig. Tom Brady, historically, the 49ers were a good destination in that sense for Tom Brady. And as a Niner fan, I was all for them doing that. However, I did not really even publicly say that because 2 years ago, if you look at the social media for the Niners, what all the fans were saying, they just did not want Tom Brady on the 49ers. And it's not even necessarily because they were a fan of Jimmy, because, they thought Jimmy was going to be the answer. I had faith that he could, win a Super Bowl after he lost the first one, after he missed that throw to Emmanuel Sanders and did not win the game at the end. And Jimmy did struggle a lot in some games in 2019, especially in the playoffs. But I had faith that Jimmy could, be back and be better than ever. But 2020 season, he was injured for most of it, and when he did play, he did not look good. And then 2021, well, there was a tale of two Jimmys. He looked good at times and then looked pretty bad at times. But I did want Tom Brady to play for the Niners, but I didn't think it was realistically going to happen. And I could understand why they wouldn't want to get rid of their quarterback who just took them to a Super Bowl. Even if he wasn't their main factor, I could definitely see why they wouldn't want to give up on a quarterback that literally was the starting quarterback in the Super Bowl in his first year as a starter. It makes perfect sense. And not only that, because you'd make the locker room really mad. You'd make George Kittle like uneasy because George Kittle and Garoppolo had great chemistry, and they still do, of course, but especially 2 years ago. Like, so you definitely wanted to see the Niners try to make it back to the Super Bowl to try to get their revenge, or either against the Chiefs or just against any AFC team with Jimmy G at the helm. And this past season, the Niners almost went back there. They blew a 17-3-7 lead against the Rams. I was there. I'm still heartbroken about that, of course. But as for this year, as for Brady coming to the Niners this year, hey, if somehow that could have realistically happened, I would have been for it. But it just doesn't make much sense. He was only gonna be 43 during the season, like when the season started 2 years ago. Now when the season starts this year, he's gonna be 45. So just no, like. But not only that, there's no way the Buccaneers would have traded Tom Brady in the NFC. Like, I don't get why, like, people realistically thought that could happen. Like, the main argument was, like, Brady owes it to the Bucs to be able to do whatever he wants because, he won them a Super Bowl, which that's true, but that's just not how a business works. That's just not how the NFL works. So, like, if Brady was going to, like, I knew that before he announced he was going to come back, that there was absolutely no way that he was going to play for anybody else but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I just knew it. Like, as cool as that would have been to have, Lance, sitting another year to learn from the greatest of all time, I just did not realistically see that happening in any way. And I'm looking forward right now to seeing Trey Lance, seeing what he can do as a starting quarterback of the Niners. Because I have a feeling that he's just going to be an absolute baller next year. Like, we've seen a few glimpses of him this past season, and now next season we're going to see the best of him as a starter. Speaking of quarterbacks on the Niners, Jimmy Garoppolo has still not been traded. Everyone thought he would be by now. The best case scenario would be to get a first-round pick for Jimmy. That's the main reason why he's been the starter for this whole time, this whole year. Why, although they thought about doing it before the Bears game, they never benched him and never had Trey Lance take over for him as a starter. When Jimmy was healthy, he started, and Jimmy also just had shoulder surgery because, of course, Jimmy was battling a thumb injury and a shoulder injury at the end of the regular season and in the postseason. So he's not even going to be eligible for training camp. He's not going to be able to practice until July, or not for training camp, but he's not going to be able to practice until training camp. I should say about until July is when Garoppolo can actually practice. Where he'd actually be healthy. So I'm hoping that they trade him and get something good for him, like get a first round pick, hopefully, because they gave up so many draft picks to get Trey Lance last year. But I don't know, because the teams that everyone predicted he would go to, like the Colts or the Commanders or the Steelers, already. Carson Wentz, of course, went to the Commanders, and Mitch Trubisky today went to the Steelers. And the Steelers and the Commanders were like the two teams that were rumored that Jimmy would be traded to, and they filled their quarterback needs. There's plenty of teams that are going to need a quarterback that Jimmy could be a better fit than their current quarterback situation. So I don't know, though. I honestly just cannot. You might ask, what do you think is going to happen? I don't know. I think he could be traded this week, but I don't know if it'll happen. I really don't. But I don't see, people think he might get cut. I mean, that could happen, but I see him eventually being traded, if it's not this week, pretty soon. But they're just waiting to see what they can get for him, because although Jimmy, of course, was not their main factor in leading them to the Niners going to the Super Bowl 2 years ago and going to the NFC Championship game this year, but he was still the starting quarterback on the team that did it. So he's definitely he's definitely a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky or Carson Wentz, in my opinion. So we'll see. The Colts are going to need a quarterback, though. Yeah, so maybe they'll go with Jimmy G. But anyway, shifting gears to my final topic, which is the Golden State Warriors. Draymond Green is going to make his return tonight against the Washington Wizards. I cannot wait, because the Warriors have struggled a lot as of lately. Before their 3-game winning streak that they just had, they lost 9 of their last 11 games. They had a 5-game losing streak. but we appear to be back on track. The Warriors got a hell of a win a couple nights ago against the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks, 122-109, led by Clay's 38 points, Jordan Poole's 30 points, and Andrew Wiggins' 21 points. Draymond's making his return tonight, and the Warriors can hopefully remain the number 2 seed and be the number 2 seed going into the playoffs, because the Suns, they got that 1 seed locked up, but hopefully the Warriors can get the 2 seed because they're battling it with the Grizzlies right now. I believe the Grizzlies are still a game ahead of them, I believe, right now. But with Draymond coming back, the Warriors hopefully are, with these last 14 games, I believe, remaining, hopefully they look the way they did at the beginning of the season, looking absolutely unstoppable, because the month of February and March, they did not play their best at all. And, Clay, when he first returned, looked really good. And then he started to struggle a little bit. And now he's looking better than ever. Now Clay is looking like the Clay of a few years ago again. Like before he had those 2 devastating injuries. So, looking forward to the game tonight against the Wizards. Let's go Warriors. Looking forward to the MLB season coming up. And looking forward to what the Niners end up doing with Jimmy Garoppolo. And looking forward to the Trey Lance era. Danny G is out. Peace!